in 1 minute. You know, everyone's waiting. Good morning and welcome. I am Sarah Lucas. I am CEO and one of the 4 co-founders of Beyond Type 1. I want to welcome you all here to our very first collaboration with Ariel Lawrence and Diabetics on the Margin. We are so pleased to be here in this beautiful space that was offered to us by Homepolish, and I want to thank Rachel and Noah and the team here for making it such a wonderful day for us to be able to come and be together in such a beautiful and comfortable environment and have some great conversation. I want to say hello to everyone on Facebook. We are so happy you all are here, and for those who couldn't be with us today, we hope you enjoy the conversation. I'm going to tell you really briefly, Beyond Type 1 was founded in 2015 to primarily serve the Type 1 population in living well today. We felt that there was a gap in just real authentic resources, and we wanted to create sort of this lifestyle lens because you all who live with Type 1 are self-managing a disease essentially for life. So we wanted to make sure you had every possible resource and ability to connect and have conversations and help each other along, because Type 1 is best managed, as we know, in a community. And of course, with your medical professionals, we have Dr. Pena here, of course, today, who is one of those wonderful healthcare providers. But Type 1 is really a disease that you all are managing. And so I wanted to thank, first of all, our sponsors that helped us today bring this event to life. Of course, Ariel, this is her vision, and you all are here because of her incredible presence on social media and her ability to bring together people in a wonderful environment, both online and now in person. But we want to thank Companion Medical, Dexcom, Insulet, Medtronic, Diabetics, you all have a bag for them in your bag, My Sugar, Roche Diabetes Care, and I know we have our friends from Tandem Diabetes Care here as well today. Thank you all so much for being here. And on behalf of everyone at Beyond Type 1, we're grateful for the opportunity. We're grateful you showed up. And I want to turn it over to Ariel, who is going to tell you a little bit about her vision for today and then introduce all of our friends on the panel.
Okay, perfect. So, as some of you may or may not know, I started my platform, Just a Little Sugar, 2 years ago. And what motivated me to do that was the fact that I felt like there was not enough visible representation of people of color within Type 1 spaces particularly, but overall within the diabetes community. But if you look around the room, you see a room filled with Black and brown folks that are wonderful allies, so clearly we have a desire to connect and to support, or at least find support within spaces such as these. So I started my platform with the intent of serving as a visible example to other people who look like me, to live boldly with their disease and to feel comfortable talking about their disease. And one of my intentions has always been to highlight other people of color who are doing awesome things. So a few months ago, I got a few of my friends together and we did a photo shoot in which we called it Diabetics on the Margin. So the idea was that we were shedding light on populations that are typically marginalized within our society that we often don't see or pay enough attention to. And as we all know, those tend to be people of color. So my hope for today is that everyone within this space would feel empowered and would leave here today feeling more confident in telling their stories, understanding and knowing that there's space for them here and comfortable in claiming that space and a seat for themselves at the table. As we all know, diabetes impact within communities of color isn't a good one, right? So if you were to think of outcomes, we know that diabetes tends to adversely affect folks who are from communities of color in terms of complications, death rates. We are 1.5 to 2 times more likely to die from complications of diabetes. If we're looking at the type 1 community in particular, Blacks and Latinos tend to have higher A1Cs. We tend to underutilize technology and pumps. And we also are 30% more likely to suffer from DKA, right? So if you think about all of those complications and those statistics, there's a lot at stake here. Our lives are at stake, and it's important that we feel connected to this community and feel like we can advocate for ourselves and share our stories. And so I really appreciate each and every one of you for showing up today and showing that our stories matter, and just really being a part of this vision. It means so much. And with that, I will begin to introduce our lovely panelists as well as moderators. So actually, wait first. Let me pause. There is this quote that I really, really wanted to read, and it's by Sonia Sotomayor, who is a Latina, a T1D from the Bronx, and of course, most importantly, a Supreme Court Justice, right? So there's a quote where she says, "A role model in the flesh provides more than inspiration. His or her very existence is confirmation of possibilities one may have every reason to doubt, saying, yes, someone like me can do this." So that's really what I want you to walk away from today, feeling like, yes, someone like me can do this. Yes, someone like me can get more involved in the diabetes community. Yes, someone like me can learn to be a better advocate for myself. Yes, someone like me who's an ally can feel more comfortable in bringing up conversations of inclusion and diversity, even when we are afraid and feel like it's not welcomed in a particular space. So with that, I am going to introduce our lovely panelist and moderator. So our moderator for the day is Grace Bonney. She is the founder. My mouth is dry, y'all, so bear with me. She is the founder of Design Sponge, which is an online blog for the creative community. She's also the author of In the Company of Women and Design Sponge at Home, and an advocate for inclusion and intersectionality. Next up, we have Ali Abdul Karim. He is the podcast host and blogger behind the Daily Diabetes Hustle, so give it up for him. Next, we have Dr. Maria Pena, who is an assistant professor and director of endocrine services at Mount Sinai Hospital. Her specialties are endocrinology, diabetes and metabolism, as well as obesity medicine. And she's from New York, y'all. Next, we have Chase DuPont and Courtney Taylor, who both started the Chase Away Diabetes Foundation shortly after Chase's diagnosis, right? And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, you started that when he was 4. Yes. Correct. Yes. So give it up for them. It's so awesome that we have a young person represented here today. And last but not least, we have the lovely Vivian Navetta, the founder of the Sonia Navetta Foundation, a nonprofit that focuses on alleviating the cost of T1D and providing services for children living with type 1 diabetes in Africa, especially Uganda and Ghana. So she's doing awesome work as well. So with that, one more time, our panelists. I'm gonna get some water, but I'm gonna give the mic to Grace.
Perfect.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm so excited to be here. I was diagnosed with type 1 only 4 years ago, and being a part of communities like this has been the thing that I think has helped keep me afloat and sane and healthy more than any other doctor or any other resource. So it's just really nice to be a part of this as an ally and talk to you all today. So I want to start with a pretty straightforward question. So much of today is about representation and supporting communities of color. I would love to know from each of you, how does that play into the work that you do, and how do you feel that we can better support each other in our community in advocacy advocating for communities of color when it comes to diabetes? Start with you.
I think it's important that we break through the media, because when we look at diabetes as a whole, it's like you have a misconception of sugar, old people. You know, the media doesn't know it, but when we put ourselves towards, you know, stuff in culture like hip hop, music, it breaks through the noise of like diabetes, cool, fashion, like it starts breaking through, and I think that's like the first step towards the big picture, the cure, you know, so we need to break through that noise, essentially, so that's how I see it.
Hello everyone, thank you again for the invitation, for inviting me to this event. As a physician, I know there's a medical student in the crowd. You know, you do rotations, you work through every single specialty, and you figure out what do I want to do when I grow up, even when you're in med school at that point. And I realized that endocrinology, a majority of my time I spent treating diabetes, and the majority of patients that came in were people of color, right? They were African Americans, Caribbean blacks, Latinos, Indians, Guyanese, people that were suffering from diabetes. And many of the guidelines were structured towards a diet that they could not identify with, right? And a lifestyle they could not identify with. And the myths that they could not identify with, like, you know, Latinos, I'm actually a Caribbean Dominican. Oh, you have sugar, you know, it's not diabetes. Do you have diabetes? No, I don't have diabetes. I have a little bit of sugar, so it's funny, a little sugar. And there's this tea that, you know, back in the homeland, they give to me, and it will go away. So that's not a problem, doctor. Let's talk about, you know, my kidneys. Well, did you know that diabetes affects your kidneys? So just raising that, and what you're saying, being in the side where a patient can't identify with me, because I'd be like, no, I know about that tea that you're talking about, it does not work. My grandma tried it, my uncle tried it, didn't work. So that's really why I decided to be in the profession of endocrinology.
So the question was about representation, right? So I think representation has always been like a crucial part of my work. I think that I've intentionally been louder about it, especially within this year. But again, the reason why I started my platform, it was a couple of years after my grandmother had passed away from complications of diabetes, and I really felt like at that point, while she was dying, witnessing her on dialysis, witnessing her go through amputations, witnessing her losing her sight. Sorry, Mom, I'm putting all my business out there. While I was watching all of that, I was really scared, and I wondered to myself, like, am I going to end up like this too? And even though I had people who were trying to reassure me, doctors, my family, I still felt like I needed a community that I could identify with within the T1D space, and I felt like that did not exist. Yes, the Dexcom alarm's going on. So with that being said, representation, I wanted to see visible examples of people like me that I could connect to, and so I decided that I was going to start small. And you know what? I was just going to share my story. And then my hope, especially over the last year, was that I would be able to get other people to do the same. So yes, it's been foundational to my work. And then I think in terms of how we can work together to raise the visibility of people of color, I think especially from allies, there has to be a willingness to commit to the idea of creating inclusive spaces for the long run, right? So diversity can't just be trendy. It can't necessarily be something that we, you know, have one event, mark it off, okay, we've met that goal and keep it moving. It actually has to be something that we commit ourselves to doing, even when we find ourselves feeling a bit uncomfortable about it. I think also, in addition, we have to be intentional in terms of connecting with people who are from underrepresented communities and being mindful of how we can utilize our own power and privilege, whether that be social capital or financial resources, to then amplify their voices.
So when I think about this question, there are a couple of parts to it for me. When I think about representation, being a Black woman, a Black school leader, a single mom, there are so many different types of stereotypes that are associated with who I am or with how I'm identified. So it's important to me to make sure that I have a positive, there's a positive perception of who I am, in schools, in our community, but then on top of it, I'm raising a Black boy in America. And I'm raising a Black boy who also is living with a disease or illness that's invisible. So that was the basis of why we started our foundation, to raise awareness, but then also influence advocacy. And when I think about what that looks like, is making type 1 diabetes, making him a priority on so many different levels. So making him a priority in our family, making him a priority in his school, in our community, and then our next stop in the country. Because, individuals who live with diabetes, especially individuals of color, they're not a priority. And because it's invisible, because people of color are not a priority, and then also because it's just not a popular illness. So that's the first part of it. And then also with our foundation and being visible in our community, we reach out to our community members, and not all of them have diabetes, but we make sure that we share our vision on the importance of education and the importance of literacy. And through that, people come out for events, whether it's back to school events, whether it's just reading in the park, and then they learn about the foundation, and then they learn about what it's like to live with type 1 diabetes. So that's why I say there's so many different parts of the question, because our representation matters, our stories matter, and that kind of leads to the advocacy that we do and that I trickle down to Chase.
First of all, from the outset, I really, really want to thank Ariel for this vision and for this opportunity to get underrepresented people to speak on a condition that's really not a priority, like you said, but putting this platform together for us to engage, and I'm looking forward to some kind of sustained engagement coming out of this, with either Beyond Type 1 as the funding partner, but I really think that you deserve to be commended on this great effort, and I'm glad to be part of this panel. From the SNF, the Sonia Nabetta Foundation point of view, to respond to your question on representation, it's actually very interesting because from our point of view, you can't devise a solution to a problem when you don't have everybody on the table. And so for us, that's what it means when you talk about representation. So let's talk about, for example, socioeconomic representation, which is very important to the foundation. If you think about a country in Africa like Malawi, let's say, 50% of the population is below the poverty line. Now, if type 1 diabetes affects somebody in that community, it is a completely different conversation for them. They're not looking for a pump, they're not looking for a cure, they're just looking to survive. And so for us, a foundation that is looking to alleviate the hefty cost of type 1 diabetes and provide holistic care, that voice is extremely important to us, and that voice needs to come to the forefront of the conversation. And in fact, our recent programmatic intervention in Ghana, we brought 10 children from Tanzania, Uganda, Kenya, Nigeria, and Ghana in partnership with T1 International. It was a deliberate effort to bring children who've never seen a plane before, never touched a passenger before, brought them to Ghana to be able to have their voice sharpened so they can speak on those issues. So that's a socioeconomic representation. Now the geographic representation, when you put Africa in the context of the globe, when philanthropic partners and NGOs and the developing world, and I know this because I have 10 years with the United Nations, engagement with Africa tends to be, I don't want to use the word paternalistic, but for lack of a better word, let's use that. And so, to your point, Ariel, the engagement has to be intentional, it has to be genuine, it has to be considerate, it has to be thoughtful, because the new type 1 diabetes in the context of Africa is a different beast, that's the fact. So to when you go on the ground, there's partners that you have to engage with in order, you have to allow them to be the experts to tell you what works in the local context. That's number one. Number two, the central government and the local government is again an important partner, because otherwise you're bringing a messianic mentality. We have the money, we're going to go to Africa, we're going to build a hospital, I'm going to walk out. And so, but there's a lot that goes around that. So that engagement that thinks beyond a pretty picture with a bunch of African kids and you walk away, it can't be that. And so for us, that representation where the voices from the local partners, the central government help formulate our response is important. And so there's that. And so I guess as part of an example would be our engagement with, when we went to Ghana, important partners would have been the First Lady's office, because the political will has to be there, and Diabetes Youth Care, who helped us put together the camp for 100 kids in Ghana just 2 weeks ago. The third dimension of it, I guess, is we're in America. SNF is an organization that's an American organization by legal personality, even though our programmatic work is in Africa. And so America is a very important, part of our work. And so when I listen to this question, I think about the folks that are on the margins are disproportionately people of color. It's a fact. And so, again, when you're thinking about how to solve the problem, they have got to be part of the conversation. And again, SNF in 2 weeks will be going to Indiana to work with PFAM. I'm not sure if you know People of Faith for Access to Medicine. There's a demonstration for Insulin for All. And many of the faces out there are going to be people like us. And so we're proud to be able to elevate our, work with Americans on the margins in that way to be able to solve problems that are global. And if I was to say what's the subject line here, what folks need to walk away with when we talk about representation is how can you win a war when you only have, or you only see, or have the perspective of a fraction of the battlefield. And so with representation, we want to close that battlefield so we can win the war.
Grace, Karen Jones would love to know if Chase has something he would like to say on this subject.
Absolutely. Chase, what do you want to say?
Grace has a question for you, Chase.
I'm going to start there. So I'm so impressed with what you have done at such a young age on your own and with your mom. And how did you find the courage and the bravery to do what you're doing? Because that can be really scary at your age.
I found the courage from diabetes camp, the walk, the Father Congress, and all the other fundraisers for diabetes. And
Well, they're not scary for you.
it's not scary because most of them they're really fun and there's not really any age limit.
Awesome.
I just want to ask one more follow-up. What does it feel like when kids who are your age talk to you or reach out to you when they realize that you have type 1, 2? Do you feel like you're making new friends, or what does that feel like for you?
Are you able to be helpful to them?
Yeah.
So think about when you go to diabetes camp, the kids who have never been there before. Or think about when you meet kids who were just diagnosed with diabetes. How do you relate to them, or how do you share your story with them?
I think you've been a really big help to a lot of them. And that leads me to my next question for everybody, because I think so much of type 1, as you mentioned when we started, is a sort of self-managed disease, and support systems are a huge supportive part of that. So for everyone here, I would love to know, what do your individual support systems look like? And do you have suggestions, like Dr. Pena, for people who want to support people in their lives with type 1? What are ways that we can be better support systems? So let's start with you. Actually, let's start with Chase. He's got the mic. Yeah. What does your support system look like?
Who supports you? Who helps you?
My mom.
Yeah.
My mom, Cody, Sean, Andrea, and most of my family, and Nurse Mac.
So when we talk about support systems, it's, I think about one of the prep questions was around burnout, and how do we utilize our support systems. And for me, there are two parts to that. There's that physical burnout, but then also the mental. And when it comes to the mental, trying not to mentally be burned out, even though I am right now, we do reach out to our family. And Chase has such a strong support system, a strong foundation of people who are just in his village who have stepped up and they reach out and they want to know all about his latest technology and what do I need to do and how do I become more of an advocate for him so that he can spend the night or so that he is okay at school. When it comes to our family, my mom and my brother are instrumental in making sure that he's safe and making sure that I don't burn out all the time. And then at his school, every year before the school year starts, the principal is a huge advocate in making sure that I get a meeting with the leadership team, the teachers that are going to be involved with him. And this year was the entire team, and they just had so many questions. And what do we do when this happens? And can you share his Dexcom information with us? So people are just invested not only in who he is as a person, but his health, his safety, and that's extremely important. And then sharing just advice for parents who have kids with diabetes. One thing that has also been a support system for me is creating a calendar and a menu so that I'm not making lunch every single morning and having to count carbs every single morning, but it's already done and I just have to pull it out and put it in, and that's helpful to share also with our supports. You want to go this way?
Okay, so again, for SNF, I don't have type 1 diabetes, and I guess I'll tell a little bit about my history when that question comes around, if it comes around. But I don't have type 1 diabetes, but I understand fully for my what diabetes burnout is like, and I understand it from the perspective of the children that the SNF serves in Uganda, Ghana, Africa, as we grow. And so what we've done to try and sort of assist, find that community, because as Sarah said, type 1 is a condition that requires a community to anchor in order to have a great outcome. And so we've created a digital community on the WhatsApp platform that is growing by the day, and so it's not easily accessible by low-resource children per se or their parents, but that's our first point of call. It's got doctors, it's got diabetes educators. I think social media is amazing because BK is on that panel, she has a series, and these children have access to them, they have easy access to me, so when there's a burnout, there's a community that's there to sort of pick them up. And it's on there, Russ, there's a whole support system on the digital platform. Now what we hope, depending on funds and so forth, that we think would be impactful would be more of a physical buddy system. Now of course implementing that is a whole other kettle of fish. It is a desire, it is something that we aspire to, because checking on each other in the physical sense also helps sort of, overcome some of that fatigue, some of that, burnout that comes with the condition. So these are the aspirations, but whether or not they'll be actualized this year, next year, I'm not sure, but they will be actualized. I'm pretty confident with partners like yourself, Beyond Type 1 and so forth. Thank you.
So I think there's two types of burnout that I experience. I think there's the burnout related to diabetes management, and then there's the burnout related to sustaining a community that values inclusion. And just talking about the work that I'm doing, sometimes, like very honestly speaking, it does feel heavy. So I would say that there's different supports that I use for kind of dealing with both of those burnouts. I think for the burnout related to management, I am so fortunate to have like Diabetics and Aisha and Gloria who are here. And there have been so many moments where, whether I'm concerned about like weight or my A1C is stubborn or something, I get super frustrated. I have been able to call them, or we have like a group chat, and I can just like share how I'm feeling, and there's no judgment from them. So I would say if you have the opportunity to connect in real life, which is what we're doing today, like with someone else who has this condition, like do it. So leave here today with a friend. I think my other way of getting support for diabetes burnout is therapy. So we don't talk about mental health in the Black community or in Black and Brown communities in general. But there are definitely seasons where, because I am a busy bee and I often overwhelm myself with work, diabetes does sometimes go to the very bottom of my list. And there's a sense of guilt that comes with that. And sometimes I found that I've allowed that guilt to really just suck me up and not really propel me to move forward. And so with therapy, it's kind of really been helpful for me to see how I am sometimes my harshest critic. And sometimes all I need to do is like just choose one thing at a time that I'm gonna focus on each day. And the more that I choose and follow through with one thing, whether that's cooking, whether it's going to the gym, I then feel more empowered to kind of push forward and do other things as well. In terms of what people who love us can do in terms of providing support when it comes to diabetes management, I would say don't put the burden on the person living with diabetes to educate you or to explain things to you. Really help us out and do some research and try to learn on your own and show that you really care about us by doing that and taking that initiative. And then in terms of the other type of burnout that I experienced, just in terms of really pushing people and reminding them of the importance of spaces like these, I would say that the online community has been super helpful. Whenever I get into moments where I'm just like, I don't feel like posting anything or writing anything, or I'm tired, like I'll get a message from someone that's super encouraging, and that helps. And even my family, my partner, my best friends, like who are just like, Ariel, this is your purpose, this is your calling, this is what you're supposed to be doing. And so I'm really fortunate to have some awesome cheerleaders in my life who have helped with that as well.
So you mentioned diabetes with Diabetics. What about your diabetes doctor?
She's cool, she's amazing.
Oh. I mean,
that's true.
That is a little bit biased, but as a physician, you're saying, you mentioned in the beginning, bringing all the parties to the table. And how can you improve your diabetes if the person being affected is not there? What I'm going to say may not come out as nice, and I'm saying as a Latina as well. I've worked in all populations. I used to work at, some people know me, in 59 between Park and Lex. I used to have a practice in the heart of Washington Heights. I volunteered in Harlem Hospital, Elmhurst Hospital. I've been in every type of practice. And unfortunately, you're talking about representation, but we also have to show up. Something as simple as showing up to your doctor's appointment. I work, we again, I know there's some medical students in the crowd. Some doctors go in there for whatever, other people go in there because they really want to. I would like to say I went into this because I love the profession. When I was 4 years old, I said I want to be a doctor. Nothing, the first one in my entire family to go to college, med school, and everything. I just love medicine. And for those of us, you always hear about the bad lawyer, bad cop, bad doctor, bad whatever, but there's also good people in the mix. Like in everything, there's good and bad. And there are good doctors that care. And what makes it a little bit frustrating is when you are the physician. I'll give you an example. I have a lady came in, person I thought that we connected because of, I'm a minority, she's a minority. I spent extra time, really delayed my schedule, but I was like, you know what, I made a change in this person's life. So I stayed there the extra time despite the restrictions that the hospital puts on you. They want you to see a certain number of, we also have a lot of pressure from one side, from insurance, and it's a lot. You do all that, you talk to the patient, I do the blood work, I say, give me your cell phone because I will call you with the results. And guess what? 6 o'clock at night, 7 o'clock, I'm there, I call, no answer. call, try to email, no response. She has something that was abnormal. Please, if you find something, we do want to help you, but make it easier for us. Pick up the phone and call you, or let me leave you a voicemail. Patients have to show up to their doctor's appointment, because you know what ends up happening? On the other side, you're seen as the non-compliant patient. All those patients have a high no-show rate. I cannot work in and I'm saying this doesn't sound like in the Medicaid population, because we have to double book because half the time they don't show. So we have to break that stigma on the other side. I'm telling you, you want the truth, this is the truth as well from the other. And like I said, I work in every single population, so I'm not putting any labels on anyone. But we also need to show up to these appointments. You talk about support systems, resources. There are, maybe not, I was looking at the American Diabetes Association website, and when you click on En Español, it's not 100% complete. So yes, but at least try to go on.
Try me on type 1 in Espanol.
I'm not,
the entire website is in Espanol.
I'm not saying I work with the ADA all the time. I'm just saying that one link is maybe going to have a little paragraph. I'm just, giving you an example. When we say that there's not as much invested. Okay, sometimes, our research are not like tip top, but there are, what I was trying to say, but there was some information there. It was definitely, maybe not as much in type 1, but there was definitely a lot in type 2 on the American Diabetes Association in Spanish, for example. The JDRF, they have I just went on their website to prepare for this panel, see what is out there. They have a bunch of walks. Look, he went to a walk and he got inspired. He's a kid, but that's what inspired him, seeing other people. It was fun. So he as a child, he gave us a lot of information. It wasn't something punitive and scary, oh my God, type 1. No, it was a fun event for him. And that makes him, okay, let me get motivated. I'm not the only one. That's how it starts. There was someone else in the audience telling me, she was with her daughter here. I said, what's the best outcome? You supporting your child. So parents getting involved. And it starts at an early age. How do you control it when you're an adult? No, if your parents made it something that was important, as you grow up and become a teenager and a young adult, you will know it's important because your mom was drilling that into you every single day. You see, you mentioned meal prep. She mentioned something very important. People say, I don't have time for meal prep. But if he notices that's a way of life, that mom took out time to meal prep, he too, that's just a habit. So again, I'm all over the place here, but showing up to your doctor's appointment. Yes, when you're down, but you can speak to your doctor. I'm going to say is medical endocrine and weight management. I'm just saying because you mentioned something. A lot of type 1s think insulin is the only way. As you get older, you do develop a little bit of type 2, and if you add metformin to your diet, to your regimen, that will help your insulin work better. So ask your doctors for that. Metformin helps that as well. So going to the appointments at least 3 to 4 times a year. You need to see your doctor every 3 months to check an A1C. Know your numbers. Hemoglobin A1C. What is my A1C? You need to know that number. Going to your eye specialist to look at your eyes. To look for something called retinopathy or bleeding behind your eyes. Keep that appointment, and you need to go at least once a year. And your foot exams. When you're younger, just make sure you look at your feet. Don't walk barefoot. Make sure there's no cuts, but looking at your feet. Those are the main things. Asking your doctor to check for protein in urine. But you need to be aware of what are the complications of diabetes and what am I supposed to screen for. And the events, there are events. I know that the resources and everything, I am 100%. Where I have a problem? With insurance is not covering insulin and not covering the pump. That's where the problem is. Really, that's where the problem is. And in general, what you're mentioning about insulin right now, it's sad. I've worked in every single population. I don't care how much money you made once you retire, your resources, like in the average middle class, doesn't matter if you're black, white, Latino, whatever race, people have, for the most part, less resources after retirement. Now I'm talking about the type 2, but I'm mentioning the insulin situation. We have a very big problem with insulin. I know people are really making their insulin last. 60-year-old, 70-year-old people that work their entire lives as officers, as teachers, people that work hardworking, they don't have money to cover their insulin now. And this is across the board. It's not even limited to type 1, it's also type 2 that patients. And that is absolutely sad. I try to give out samples, but there's just not enough samples. Insulin costs about $700, $800. That's ridiculous. That should not be the case. And that's, I'm telling you, yes, minorities are affected definitely more, 100%, but it's everyone. It's everyone right now. Because I don't care, you must have a lot of money to spend about $700 a month on insulin.
This is why they need to go to Indianapolis and protest, because at the end of the day, insulin is life in this country.
Insulin, so when you mention insulin, something that everyone, because I deal with this all the time, trying to get a prior auth, trying to get this and that. So that's really, and another thing so coverage, another way of increasing your voice is actually calling the insurance. Just call them, nag them. Your doctor is calling, believe it or not, because there are some programs that we have, we try to call them. But if you call them as well, believe it or not, that's going to help. And that's where I do feel that minorities need to call a little bit more, but we sometimes don't know that we can do that. We think, okay, the doctor said it's not coming, that's it. No, you can actually call, it helps. And also, I mean, there's some pharmaceuticals here, but if you call the company directly, sometimes they work something out with you, and they'll mail it to your doctor's office, and then your doctor can give it to you. That's something that I learned from my other patient. I wasn't aware of that. That's something that we can also do as well. So trying to make our voices heard, going to your doctor's appointments, and definitely I think at a government level we have to lobby for better costs for all medications.
And if you go under beyondtype1.org and you look under access, there's ways to, if you need help talking to your insurance company, if you need help getting insulin, we've got some resources there. But no doubt, there's a lot of work to do around access, for sure. All right, Ali is beeping.
We're at the Dr. Maria. I'll be honest, I've neglected my doctor with Sephora. It's like a story I don't want to get into right now, but definitely. It's funny, talking about burnout, I think 2 weeks ago, I was just really burnt out. You know, my go-to is always food, you know, binge eating, not caring, I don't care, you know, rebellious. I went to a meetup, you know, my friends I usually see, and it was like, I was, you know, making a video and I'm like, parentheses, cure to burnout. You know, if you think about it, it's really powerful. You know, if you're in college, you're in school, and you just got a pump or you just got diagnosed, you're not gonna go, hey Dave, you know, I'm trying to get my basals right. He's like, what are you talking about? You know, we're talking about girls or a teacher, you know. So it's important whether, you know, you're an introvert, extrovert, introvert. Social media, use that, you know, put yourself out to the world, be vulnerable, engage with those people, and then get outside your comfort zone by going to the meetups, you know, quality people, you know, you can meet a bunch of diabetics, I don't care, but it's being a product of your environment, like talking about meal prep and everything. It's really a cure to burnout. You know, we need that as support, and that's how I see it.
Okay, can I just because I had a point to add, maybe add or something or whatever, because you mentioned not making doctor's appointment. Now in America, that's obviously, you know, a conversation in itself. I mean, because, you know, folks have 3 jobs and all of this is, you know, different. In Africa, Uganda, Kenya, and all of this, the folks that we, SNF works with, we've had to, and this is why I say it's very important to engage with the local partners, because then you get a sense of what needs to be done. Because these children live far. You set up clinics, you know, you think that's enough. No. They have to decide, their parent has to decide whether to feed the family of 6 or walk this child 6 months to go to the clinic. So there's just a multitude of a multi-tiered like issue of just getting to clinic. Again, it comes down to socioeconomics. So when you're building the program, you're thinking, okay, there's that fund, with a pot of funds that needs to be considered for getting the child from A to B, because that's a big deal. So that consideration, even here in America, because I know many friends whose parents are juggling 3 jobs, she didn't pick up because probably she's at another job. And then there's just so much that's going on, and that, you know, making the appointment, of course, you want to make that appointment more than likely. 9 out of 10 they probably do, but they just can't because of just structural issues, financial issues, socioeconomic issues. And so building that into that conversation, however extra mile you go, I think.
So let me tell you, so just another thing that I do. So I'm also part of this medical mission in the Dominican Republic, Haiti, and other countries. So my parents are actually from the farm. That's what I was saying. Like, my parents come from a farm. They tell me every single day I'm tired. Well, I used to walk 5 miles to go to school. So I know the spiel on that, and I've done those missions. And in hospitals that like they have to buy, I didn't know you have to buy gloves in certain like if you're in the OR, you have to buy the gloves that you need, or like the syringe to get the medication. Like in some of the, you know, the Dominican Republic has a lot of good hospitals, but I'm talking to you the impoverished ones, right? So I know that, because I've been there. I also know, that's also why I'm in another organization called Vida Si, Diabetics No, for Latinos, because of everything you're saying. I come from a house where my dad used to wake up at 6 in the morning and come home whenever he came at 2 in the morning. There's no doctors open, I think, from, he would need to see a doctor from 3 in the morning to 4 or 5. Right. So I understand that side. However, this is how I present, and I've been learning about motivational interviewing. I think that as physicians or clinicians, we need to know that. If I were to tell the following, I'm going to use you as an example, the ones that have type 1. You're so caught up with typing or doing this and that for work, and diabetes becomes your last thing, right? If I were to tell you the thing that you're so concerned about, what if in a couple of years you cannot see them anymore? Or what if you cannot walk on your own? And I don't mean to scare you, because that's not what I'm trying to do. But I'm saying, so it's all like when we wake up in the morning, do we think about, I need to should I brush my teeth today or no? No, that's something that you have to do for the most part. You should be brushing your teeth. For the most part, when we wake up, we could be as tired. And I guess moms are the best one. When you wake up and you're tired or you're down, you say I'm not gonna go to work today. No, you have to. For whatever reason, you have to go to work. I understand because which you're mentioning about the access and socioeconomic. I came from a unique medical training called Sophie Davis, where it was a biopsychosocial model of medicine. So I know a lot of psychosomatic aspects of medicine. I know also those barriers. Believe me, I understand. And yes, it's not too far from Africa and the U.S. When you're a minority in the U.S. or in any other country, you still have those barriers. So I'm not saying that. But and that's a different situation. Like what you're describing is a more global, international. That doesn't only apply to Africa, that applies to many other countries as well. But what I'm trying to say from my point of view, that's why you invited me here. Here, I think we have to take advantage of our rights, right? I think there's just external family leave or medical leave. I know I signed some forms for some patient where they're FMLA, where you're supposed to have, you're given permission, your doctor has to fill out the form, but you're given permission to make it to your appointment. So that's one thing. Again, that's what we as a community have to tell our people, right? Hey, you have this right. So that's where we come in. That's where it is. But once they have that information and we empower them with that information and with those tools, it's on them now to take advantage of those tools and make them work. So that's what I'm saying, it goes both ways. So I'm all about sharing the information, this kind of environment, and letting them know about their resources. And I learn from my patients all the time. Like when they get them, how did you get that? How do you do this? They teach me as well. But once we have that information, it's our responsibility, like what you're doing right now, that this is how we help them, but then they have to be receptive as well. It's like you. It's again, and you're very smart. I think it shouldn't be a paternalistic or maternalistic relationship, but in a way, it should be in a way like her. You are taking care of Chase. You're showing him the way. It's on him to take advantage and continue, what you're doing. So that's just my point of view when it comes to that. But no, I'm not negating at all what you're saying about other countries. It's just not that. It's not like, oh, they don't want to wake up or stand up. It's just that they have physical, real barriers and also cost again. You're right. It's either eating today or getting the medication. So and that's a sad situation that's happening worldwide, and it shouldn't. When this world has so many resources and so much.
Can I make one more point, please? Yeah. Because the initial question was around support system, and then Ariel brought up the burnout around guilt, and Dr. Pena, did I say it correctly? Dr. Pena brought up making sure that if you have type 1, attending your appointments. And it made me think back to Chase had an endocrinology appointment back in July, and I started a new job in July. So I reached out to my brother, who's very much involved in Chase's care, every single day. So I asked him if he could take Chase to his endocrinology appointment. Usually I'm taking him every 3 months. I'm there, literally I call CHOP, we go to Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, I call CHOP, or we might as well get an apartment there because we're just always there. And I saw a meme on Instagram once that said that for teachers, it's more work to prepare for calling out or being sick because you have to prep all of this stuff for a substitute teacher, which is the same thing when prepping someone else to take your child to an endocrinology appointment. Because I'm literally trying to think of, okay, what are all the questions I have? What are all the concerns I have? Why was his blood sugar high on this day? What do I want them to know? So I literally sent my brother to this appointment with 2 pages of notes on top of the fact that he already knows about everything that's happening with Chase. And when he came back, and I'm gonna pause there for a second, thinking about the guilt, in the summertime, Chase's blood sugars are all over the place. Because he's going to camp, this year he went to a camp where there wasn't a medical professional and there wasn't someone who actually knows how to help him manage. So his blood sugars some days would be 500 and then 40. And then 400 and it's 80. So it's all over the place. And then days where it's just sweating off because it's hot and he's constantly active. So I knew his A1C was going to be crazy. So I'm also like, do I reschedule it for another 3 months? That way I can get it back together. No, he needs to go because we're about to go back to school. And it's real, right? So when my brother reported back, after taking him to the appointment, he's sharing notes from the doctor and then the doctor's supervisor, I don't know what they're called. And I'm sitting there literally with tears in my eyes. And my brother, he didn't think anything of it. He was like, she said this and she said this. But then he starts talking about, he's like, but then it started to make me feel this way. And you're right, Dr. Pena. There's so many amazing doctors out there. Chase's first endocrinologist, Dr. Lord, amazing. And I'm not saying that his endocrinologist now is bad by any means, not at all. However, there are sometimes our medical professionals have to be aware of the tone in which they are speaking to us, in which, there are different ways to ask a question. So if your A1C is high, it's not, well, your A1C is this, what's going on? Or, so this is what your A1C is, let's talk about it. Let's talk about changes that happen. There are different ways, because it comes all to us as you don't know what you're doing. I'm going to end this soon. I had a social worker at CHOP come in and was like, hey, I wanted to talk to you. Well, first of all, social worker coming in, like, for what, ma'am? But she came in and she's like, we were looking at the notes. I'm losing the terminology right now, but we're looking at it. We see there are sometimes when his blood sugar is high, or we can see, these numbers, and it looks like he didn't get insulin. No, he did get insulin, but it's not coming up on his pump, because when I changed my child's site, I don't give him insulin from his pump because it stings him. So you're right, you can't see it on there. So instead of assuming that I'm not giving my kid insulin, that puts up a wall for me. And if I wasn't the person who I am, the person who my mother has raised me to be, to speak up and to be okay with advocating for myself, advocating for my child, I can only imagine there are probably parents who are like, I'm not going to take them this month. I'm not going to take them right now because I don't want to feel guilty about it, because I'm doing the very best that I can. And I have an advantage because I'm an educator, because I have put myself out there to not only educate myself, but educate others about what it means to live with type 1 diabetes. And I'm living with type 1 diabetes because my son is. So it's a 24-hour job for me. I don't get sleep at night. So I wanted to just kind of combine the 2 themes of what you said about the guilt, and then also about like just showing up for your appointments. And when you show up for your appointments and you feel guilty, saying like, okay, first of all, back up, because you're right. My blood sugar was low this night, and no, I didn't feel like getting up to give myself insulin. I have slept through his alarm, and anybody that has a Dexcom knows like those alarms are loud as I don't know what. And there's some nights when I'm so exhausted, and my 6-year-old daughter will come in my room like, his alarm is going off. Just speaking up for yourself, for your child, for whoever you are taking care of, and not being afraid to go to those appointments and saying, listen, my A1C may be high this month, but we'll figure it out together, but you're not going to make me feel guilty about it.
Not to act like I want to be you're at 100. Like, I agree with you. I agree with you, and that's also part of the reason why I wanted to go into medicine. Remember, that's the first thing you guys asked. Why do you want? Because of that, because I wanted to be relatable to patients, right? I want to be, there's certain things that people recommend. I never recommend to a patient something that I can't adhere to. Like, going to sleep on time, I try. Like, if I can manage to be in bed by midnight, that's like a win for me. So, like, things like that. So I also do obesity medicine. So what you're talking about is the terminology, and I'll be very honest. Everything now has become a customer service thing. If you're not getting that from your physician, find someone else. I know it sounds whatever. Keep it moving and find someone else because this is your life. Right now, there should not be any lows with let's say he skips a meal or whoever has a pump, for example, you should not be having lows if you're skipping a meal. You shouldn't skip a meal, but if you do skip a meal, right, because realistically we all do, you shouldn't have a low. So that means that your basal has to be adjusted. That's the first thing. Second of all, you're going again back to the stigma and bias. You're referring to, yes, you're absolutely right. People have this thing that certain people that are a certain way, whatever you want to call it, right, reading between lines, are non-compliant or non-whatever. So you need to find someone that's more open-minded in that sense. It doesn't make you feel guilty. Since I do a lot of weight management, they're supposed to see me like every month, and I know whenever they're skipping it's because they're feeling guilty. So that's, I know right off the bat, like, this is a guilt-free zone. Yes, and sometimes we come off as doctors, and that you mentioned the word paternalistic and maternalistic, and we have to stop that. We have to, you would never want your parents to scream at you, even though they do it out of with the best intentions, but no one wants to be screamed at. So, again, 100%, you have to find someone, just tell your doctor, look, you think that I want to have this, just tell them. Sometimes they don't realize. And also, it's unfortunately the healthcare system, like you're talking about health in Africa, I'm telling you health in the U.S. Health in the U.S. we're having, it's also the pressures. We are there till late, like I'm telling you, Thursday I was there till like 9 o'clock. I was almost dozing off, like driving home because just on the computer, doing notes, trying to call everyone. It's not easy for everyone. But try to find someone that you feel cares. Try to find a center that has the resources. Ideally for type 1, you have to see an endocrinologist. A center that has diabetic educators are essential. They're an amazing support system because they're the ones that are going to have the time to really fine-tune everything. You need nurse practitioners. You need a group. So whenever you're looking, if your insurance allows it, if where you live allows it, find a place that's really known as a diabetes center. Because I think they have the culture that's better for them. And also find a place that's close to your home, believe it or not, or your job, because no one's going to drive an hour or two, even if it's the best care. You need to find a place that's close to you. So you have to look at all those factors when you're looking at care. He shouldn't, they should be able, the physician should be knowledgeable enough to be able to adjust his insulin to a way that they can prep for when it's summertime or whatever, okay?
I just want to take a moment to thank you for sharing that, Courtney, because I think the entire room had we've been there moment, and I think we're out of time, so I want to open up to the audience to ask questions, but I just want to thank you for sharing that. I think that's something that we don't talk about online enough, and I think we see a lot of Instagram accounts that share the unicorn flatline number, and that's great, and it's wonderful when that happens, but I think it's a lot more realistic to have the moments where we're not telling doctors something that we don't feel great about. I've been there. Just thank you for sharing that. That was very helpful. I want to open it up to all of you. I see a hand. Stand up, project. Let's go.
Okay, so first, Courtney, I want to say thank you for saying that because we know that we feel guilty when we go to the doctor's office and get prepared for that A1C, but to hear it coming from a parent actually saying that they don't want to, sorry, took a president this morning, that they don't want to take their child to an appointment because they don't want to be reprimanded because of the way that they quote unquote, the doctor believes that you didn't take care of your son was eye-opening because we never hear that in the community. We always hear, well, I teach my son or my kid how to do X, Y, Z and how to excel, but to hear those stories and those voices, thank you so much. That's all I have to say. Oh, and then I have something for you as well. So, I know that people are going to kill me because I totally agree with you. I think that when we live in a society, when people care more about what their cell phones can do and cannot do, and I take advantage of the healthcare system, I think that's a real problem, but that's something totally separate. You had mentioned about the basal settings. I think that sometimes we assume that we give people technology, but we don't give them the education and they empower them to use the technology in the way that's intended to do. Because I'm 37 years old, so I shouldn't have to depend on my endocrinologist to tell me how to fix my setting. So like I said, that's a totally different conversation. But I think that as we giving people technology, we also need to make sure that they understand how to really use that technology to the best in the way that's intended to be used.
Well, that's your endocrinologist's fault. No, that's what it is. And also you have the resource of always calling the company. Whoever they come in, and essentially they do like one-on-one. It's also that, and just to remind you for your appointments, if your doctor is in a health system that has an electronic medical record, I hate it and love it. I hate it because it's a lot of typing and it gives me carpal tunnel, but it allows you to communicate with your doctor. You might not get a response overnight because it's hard, but at least you get to send your settings. And I've been doing that. Like, if you tell your doctor, if your doctor cares, right? So that's what you first have to establish. Do I have a relationship with this person? If they care, I have patients that cannot make it every 3 months because of work, because they have a bunch of other appointments they need to attend to. So maybe what you can do is upload your finger sticks, like the glucose levels of the log, and your doctor can adjust it through that.
I mean, well, here's the thing though.
I'm not saying you specifically, I'm saying in general for anyone. Ask your doctor, can we do that? If I have to miss an appointment for whatever, because things happen, I know it happens. Send uploading your report, and maybe your doctor can interpret the report and give you suggestions on how to make changes.
But that's also why I said I have an advantage, because I know how to change his basal. I changed his basal. I know how, like, I uploaded all of that. But that, again, puts me at an advantage. And you're right, like, it's the endocrinologist's responsibility to educate, because not everyone is going to take the initiative and like, okay, let me learn something else other than what my doctor is saying, and I do that. So that's the point I was making. Like, you know, it's the doctors, that relationship that's there. So I agree 100%, and you're welcome.
I just also want to add, like, I live in a rural area outside of New York, and I think it's important to note that, like, I drive 2.5 hours to go to my endocrinologist appointment because my endocrinologist upstate still doesn't believe I have type 1. It's a whole thing. But I think it's important to acknowledge that not everybody has access to an endocrinologist that knows something. There are so many great support. I'm sure, I mean, we all know Beyond Type 1, but I think that, and Ali and I were talking about this beforehand, Facebook is full of these groups. If you feel like you're not getting what you need from your endocrinologist, try somebody else. I learned more from the Type 1 athletes group on Facebook. I'm not an athlete, by the way, but it's a great support group of people who constantly test, who upload their Dexcom numbers, who upload everything, and they constantly test. And I have learned more about my body in the past 4 years from that Facebook group than I've ever learned from my doctors, even though I now have a good one. So I think that in tandem with a great doctor is an important thing to take advantage of. Does anyone have another question before we start? I'm just gonna hurry on with that person in striped shirt.
My question is for Dr. Vieira. I actually work in social services, and I know that you touched on motivational interviewing. Motivational interviewing is great with rolling with resistance. So I guess my question is that something that practitioners are openly available to maybe partake in? I actually was in a training yesterday for a master class, and I found it really helpful when I was speaking to my clients, and it helps them kind of like reflect on their own feelings on like why they should change, and it's been proven to work on like long-lasting change for the future.
You're asking if doctors are being trained or
if they're open to being trained.
I think, you know, everything, I guess, again, we all have so many hats. Maybe that's something that I can bring up. The reason why I learned, I'll be honest, I did not learn that in medical school, and I did not learn that up until very recently. I read about motivational interviewing, and I will leave that up to my CDE or my social worker to do. But then after a while, it's like, okay, they can't get an appointment with the CDE, or they can't get an appointment with social worker, I guess I have to do it. So I said, okay, I took it upon myself to learn it. The reason why I learned motivational interviewing is because I do obesity medicine. So aside from being endocrine, I'm a specialist in obesity medicine, and that's something that's very useful in helping people identify the barriers, preventing them to adhering to a lifestyle that will be conducive to healthy eating. That's how I learned it. Doctors are not resistant to it, but I think the better question is, it should actually be introduced in the medical school curriculum and in residency, and it's not being done. It's the same thing as nutrition, it's not being introduced into the curriculum. So that's something very good. I guess now we're learning about it. Maybe in a couple of years we can raise awareness about it. But you're absolutely right. I think motivational interview is just a good way of like that, like trying to get the person to adhere to a change.
I agree, thank you.
Yeah, I'm curious. Hi. So I think I have appreciated everything that everyone has said, but I do feel like I haven't heard from those with the experience of living with diabetes as much, and so I'm curious if I could just maybe hear 3 things about what being in this space means to you right now, and also maybe I think something that has really brought us all together is online platforms. I know that's kind of the first place that, as a type 1 diabetic and a type 1 diabetic of color, where I actually saw folks that looked like me that were kind of coming out of the woodwork. And so I'm kind of, I guess it's a 2-part question, but what do you kind of, what brought you here? What's kind of the importance of being in this space? And then second of all, kind of how are you utilizing online platforms?
I'd say for me, I've always been really inclined to do something in my life, you know, being an immigrant and super ambitious and crazy. It's like when you get diagnosed, it's like you can't just put a wall on it, like, oh, I'm still gonna do this. Obviously that's cool, but for me, I've always been really energetic towards being super healthy and, you know, talking about burnout a lot. That's been huge for me, you know, like, and the second part of that question is, we're kind of, when we're talking about people of color, it's definitely a minority with type 1. Type 1 in general is a minority. You know, you don't go around and see a punk, oh my God, someone has a punk, you know? And then on top of it, they're African American, or they're Arab, or Latino. So like, you know, when I first got diagnosed, I was looking up diabetic bodybuilders or, you know, artists with diabetes, and it's like 0. You'll find a commercial in Spanish or like something about type 2. It's really underspoken. That's been my big push for us to be in the media. I know this sounds really vague, but if you know the Instagram Explore page where all the popular pages are at, my vision is like one day we have to be there where like the most funniest memes are there, like the hip hop. So what happens is people know who we are and the stigma's gone, and then we all as a community can like stand together and say, okay, here's where we should go towards a cure, or here's where we should go as a community. That's the big thing for me.
So I'm not going to give my typical answer because I feel like a lot of you guys are already familiar with my story and why I wanted to create my platform, Just a Little Shitter. But I will say that in sitting here today and just listening to the conversations around stigmas and empowering people, etc., I realized that I, as well, I'm pretty sure most of us on this panel, we are a very privileged group, and that we are educated, we feel comfortable and okay with advocating and speaking up for ourselves and saying to doctors what I need. And I think for a lot of people who are coming from communities of color, that is not something that they're accustomed to doing, especially in a white world. It could be cultural reasons where, you know, we're taught to listen, a doctor is the expert, we just receive their information, we don't necessarily push back, we don't necessarily feel open in sharing our opinion. And so when I think about why I wanted to create this space or what this space today means for me, I think it's so important because at the end of the day, I want to empower other people to be able to do what I am doing today. It shouldn't be the 1, 2, 3, 4 same people of color you are always calling on to speak about the diabetes experience. There should be more people who are openly doing this. And so my hope is to get those people who might feel a little bit timid, might have had a bad experience with a medical professional and want to tap out of diabetes, to say, you know what, like, she's doing it, I can do it too. He's doing it, I can do it too. And so that's what this space means. And then when I think about the online community and social media, again, I don't necessarily know what it is. I know that with some platforms, like, people self-select and you decide to share your pictures, your stories, etc. And I don't know if it's that we are not aware that these platforms exist, or because we don't see enough people who look like us, we don't feel comfortable in presenting ourselves to these platforms. So that's always something that I've been mindful of, which is why I try to create a strong social media presence so that I can say, like, hey, yes, be a Black woman or a Black man or a Latina, and use that T1D hashtag, use that Live Beyond hashtag, right? So that these platforms and whoever's involved with them can see that you in fact exist And even if you don't feel necessarily comfortable reaching out to them, maybe they'll reach out to you and say, hey, we want to share your story, or we want to highlight you in some way. So I hope that answers some of your question.
So I want to give Chase a visual to help him understand what the question is. So I want you to picture that this is your classroom, right? And if I ask everybody in your classroom with you sitting in there, and you guys answer honestly, can you raise your hand if you are living with type 1 diabetes? High, really high. Now, think about your classroom now, and think about this was your classroom. How does it feel, the difference? So how does it feel seeing all of those hands raised? People who are living with diabetes, just like you. Imagine if this was your classroom. These are all of the people in your classroom, and you all have diabetes. How would you feel?
I would kind of get excited because there's also other people like me in my classroom that know how it feels to live with type 1 diabetes.
Okay.
We're all gonna try not to cry. We're out of time. Does anyone have one last question? Yeah, go ahead.
So my question is, as a person of color living with type 1 diabetes, we all know that right now, we kind of, in terms of like race relations in America, where the atmosphere is kind of dicey. So when you do have events that highlights people of color living with type 1 diabetes, and then you have a lot of backlash, like a lot of people saying, why are you being divisive? Just shining negativity into the work that we're trying to do. I just wanted to know what any of you guys feel is a way to best handle situations like that, because I'm not going anywhere anytime soon.
I'd say that's really hard because one of my challenges is when I put myself out to media, I'm like, oh, they're gonna hate me because I'm aggressive here, or oh, that's unacceptable. You can't say that, because what people have to realize is it's not gonna be, sunshine. We all know that. Diabetes is not, being a strong advocate, you're gonna have to go through people that say, oh, I don't like you, or oh, so I don't have the complete answer because I'm still struggling with that, but I think it's okay for a couple people to hate us, but to get through the people that really care and want to stand up and say something. So I guess be you.
Grace, how do you handle when these situations arise?
I just want to say, as an ally, and for all of white people in the room, it is absolutely our job to talk to the other really shitty white people who are doing a poor job of it. That we've all talked about, like, I got some comments on my feed about this event saying, why do you have to be divisive? Or, like, why can't everyone be there? I have plenty of space. I want to hold this mic as little as humanly possible. I have plenty of space. We don't need any more space. There's tons of visibility for white people with type 1. So if somebody is saying that around you, tell them why that is wrong. It is our job as white people to deal with our people. So please speak up if you see that happening. Do not shy away from it. Use your DMs, talk to people, set them straight, because it is not everybody else's job in this room to do that. There's enough exhausting work being done. So please do that work.
And this event was open to anyone who wanted to come and be a part of the conversation. And I think, some of that, any of that feedback is exactly why we need to have these events and these conversations. And we just need to keep having them. I know Beyond Type 1 is very interested in amplifying messaging and being a microphone, and we're not afraid to say anything, as some of you have probably seen from we want to talk about the things that other people shy away from, because we want to be authentic and real.
Exactly, and that's what I was going to say, right? So the assumption is that when we have events like this, we are excluding white people. But no, a celebration for people of color or coming out to support this community does not mean that you are not welcome here. In fact, you are. And in fact, we need you to be here, because otherwise we're just preaching to the choir. So the white people who are here are allies and already understand why this work of inclusion and diversity and having many stories is so important. It's the people who are like, why do you need that event, or why can't I come, who actually need to be in this space and understand that no, just because it's for not even for people of color, but just because we're supporting people of color,
that doesn't mean that there's not space for you here as well. You need to be a part of this conversation.
And organizations too.
Yeah.
Pushing back and standing up and not removing things from their websites and
I just, from a parent perspective, and thinking about events and organizations, you know, Chase shared that going to diabetes camp is so much fun to him. My brother volunteered at the diabetes camp. If we took my brother out of the equation, there's no one adult that looks like him that will be present. When we go to Call to Congress, there are like a handful of families, Black and brown families, who are there, but when there are presentations that are being done, when there's panels that are being done in preparation for it, no one looks like us on those panels. And this last year, I made a comment at the Call to Congress in front of all of the advocates, and afterwards everyone's like, oh my God, that was so amazing, you speak so well, blah, blah, blah. And no, that's not a compliment. So it's, you know, important for me, and it was my responsibility to reach out to those in charge, those at the table in those organizations, and ask, and not even to demand, but to ask. I'm curious as to why there wasn't more representation for people who look like my son in leadership positions, people who are actually handling it. So coming from a parent perspective, but also, you know, as an advocate for yourself, it's also about speaking up. And while you shouldn't always have to carry that, because it is important for us to have allies, but do it. And it's gonna make it's gonna piss some people off, it's gonna make them mad. And even in your jobs of employment, your employment, speaking up as well. So just always speaking up. I don't care whose told you're stepping on, who's, you know, upset, who's angry, it doesn't matter. Your voice matters, your life matters. And that doesn't mean that others don't.
Way over our time, but this was really important to hear all of you. Please join me in thanking everyone on this panel. Please stay, ask everybody questions, keep this conversation going. Ariel, do you want to say anything else before?
I really just want to say thank you again for everyone who showed up today, my people of color who showed why this space is so important, for the panelists who talked about the importance of being aware psychosocially and being aware of different structural barriers and having an understanding of that, being culturally competent and knowing how to speak to the communities that you're serving. To my mama over here who is so transparent about her own experience in terms of trying to best service her son. Vivian for giving us the perspective of Africa and pushing back against paternalistic ideologies. And Ali, like, you really held it down. I know you're super nervous. So. I am so grateful for each and every one of you. And again, it really is my hope that if you are one of those people who came here today thinking, man, like, what she's doing is so amazing, or this is so amazing, think about how you yourself can do something like this as well. Like, I don't want to carry this burden alone. I would love to have other people who are just as vocal as me and who feel just as comfortable and confident in creating spaces like these. And to our allies, thank you again for giving us this space and opportunity to really share our stories. And I trust that each of you will go back into your own spaces and push the folks who look like you to really take seriously the concerns of communities of color. So thank you again to everyone for being here.